Kamito is a miserable loser and have some big eyes. Despite that, he has also have some special abilities because he was the only guy who could control spirits, which are magical beings. Because of his power, he got invited to a magical school for girls. Unfortunately, his life took a bad turn when a rude girl made him her servant, making him do chore like a maid at home. When Kamito stumbled upon a red-haired girl bathing in a river, he quickly reassured her that he didn't mean any harm. He clarified that he was an EDP. The embarrassed girl then revealed that she was 16 years old. But our pervy Mix says that it is impossible, because 16-year-old is not perfect as yours. This angered her, and she summoned her fire elemental when she realized she was a spirit elementalist. Kamito attempted to talk to her, but she used her flaming whip against him. The whip cut through the tree he was hiding behind. Kamito reminded her that she was still exposing herself while attacking him, causing her to drop the whip as she tried to cover up. However, the whip accidentally cut through the tree behind her. Kamito noticed this and quickly saved her before the tree fell, but in the process, he accidentally grabbed her balance. If you know guys about balance, then comment what kind of balon you like. She whipped him again, and when he woke up, the whip was tied around his neck. She was fully dressed now and told him to be grateful she spared his life. Kamito reminded her that he had saved her, but the girl, whose name was Claire, claimed he had only pretended to save her to touch her. He smiled and pointed out that she was one of the Areishia Spirit Academy's shrine princesses, which made her ask why that mattered. He explained that only shrine maidens could interact with spirits from Astral Zero, so it was clear she had no experience with men. He also mentioned that she was quite bold for wearing red underwear. She immediately argued, insisting that her underwear was white. That's when she realized he had been teasing her. Seeing her embarrassment, he stood up and apologized. When she asked why he was in the forest, he showed her a letter explaining that he had been invited by Greyworth of the Academy. As they walked through the forest, Kamito asked Claire why she was there. She told him she was purifying herself in preparation for a spirit contract. She led him to an old building protected by a barrier and explained that inside was the legendary holy sword, Demon Slayer. This sword had supposedly defeated the demon lord Solomon. Claire said no shrine princess had managed to form a contract with it since the school's founding, so they weren't sure if it was real. However, because it housed a powerful spirit, she was willing to try. Kamito pointed out that she was already contracted to a fire spirit, and she admitted she needed more power. But he reminded her that sealed spirits were challenging to tame and could even pose a threat to their elementalists. Claire argued that she needed more power and took the barrier down before walking inside. Kamito followed her, but she made it clear that she wouldn't be responsible for him if anything went wrong. He asked if she was sure she could tame the spirit, and when she said yes, he insisted that there would be no problem if he came along. They soon reached the room containing the sword, positioned on an altar in the middle. As Claire approached it, Kamito warned her to be careful. In response, Claire teased him for being scared. When she reached the altar and pulled the sword from the stone, it turned to ashes, causing the altar to explode. Kamito quickly saved her from harm and revealed the real sword hovering above them, which attacked them. Kamito pulled them out of harm's way, but Claire got up and summoned her elemental, which took on its spirit form and attacked the sword. Unfortunately, the elemental was stabbed, and as Claire was about to be attacked, Kamito stepped in front of her. He held up his hand, allowing the sword to stab him, and spoke the contract words, managing to form a contract with the sword. The contract formation knocked him out cold. When he woke up later, Claire asked how a man could form a contract with a spirit, expressing surprise since only females had been able to do so. While she complained, Kamito wondered if she knew that there was only one man in history who had ever done that. When Kamito didn't provide her with an answer, Claire demanded that he become her contracted spirit. Later on, Claire led Kamito to the academy with her whip wrapped around his neck like a leash. He thanked her for showing him the way but asked why she had led him there like a stubborn donkey. Claire told him it was because he hadn't agreed to form a contract with her. He introduced himself as Kazehaya Kamito, but she found it weird and decided to call him Captain Fugly. Kamito mentioned that her name, Claire Rouge, wasn't common either. She admitted it sounded weird, but he said it sounded nice to him. Claire got embarrassed and tried to play it off, but when she turned around, she realized he had gotten loose and went in search of him. However, Kamito, who was in a nearby tree, jumped down and headed to the headmaster's office. As he walked through the school hall, the students wondered what a guy was doing in their school and whispered amongst themselves. When Kamito reached the headmaster's door, he overheard her arguing with someone who disagreed with her decision to invite him to the school. Suddenly, the door was kicked open, and a blue-haired girl kicked him to the floor before straddling him and holding her sword to his neck. When she realized he was a guy, she stood up and threatened to cut him up. She tried to attack him, but he moved out of the way. Before she could strike again, the headmaster told her to stand down. The girl, whom the headmaster referred to as Ellis, a foreign guard, tried to argue, but the headmaster didn't give her the chance to speak and asked her to stand down before inviting Kamito into her office. Inside her office, Greyworth is fucking Kamito. Sorry guys, I mean Greyworth informed him that Ellis was the head of the Sylphid Knights, responsible for maintaining order in the school. She expressed her displeasure with the idea of him being around. While speaking, she noticed the spirit seal on his right hand and asked how he had obtained it. Kamito told her it was a long story and then asked if what she had written in the letter was true. She confirmed it and mentioned that his contracted spirit was still alive. Kamito then inquired about Restia, the spirit, but Greyworth informed him that she wouldn't share that information. Kamito questioned what Greyworth hoped to achieve by withholding the information, and she told him that she was having him transferred to the school. Sometime later, while Ellis was giving him a tour of the school, Kamito wondered about Greyworth's intentions. His thoughts were interrupted by Ellis, who accused him of checking out her backside. Kamito explained that he had been lost in thought and told her not to get upset. Ellis reminded him that she was only tolerating his presence in the school because of the headmaster and asserted that she would never accept a male elementalist. She then took him to the stables and pointed to a poorly built shack, informing him that it would be his lodging since he smelled like a donkey with a chronic case of body odor. Next, she led him to his classroom and left him in front of the door, only for Claire to use her whip to pull him towards her. Claire asked why he was being friendly with Ellis after running away from her. Kamito explained that Ellis was showing him around the school as he was now a student there. Claire didn't believe him, insisting that there were no male elementalists. The slow-witted girl then reminded him that he had stolen the sword from her, so he had to form a contract with her. Tired of her insistent yapping, Kamito agreed. However, the smug smile on her face disappeared when he backed her into a corner and stated that to form a contract with a high-level humanoid spirit, they had to seal it with a kiss. Claire became flushed and tried to give some shit to RMC, and she argued that it wasn't necessary to do that. But Armic is fan of Andrew Tate, so he says shut the fuck up. And he asked if she was scared and tilted her chin up confidently. Before he could go further, they were interrupted by Freya, their teacher. Later, inside the classroom, Kamito introduced himself to the class and was met with mixed emotions, making him realize that starting a herm was impossible. When he noticed Claire fuming in her chair, he wondered if she had forgiven him for teasing her earlier. One of the students asked if he had tamed the sword spirit, and he questioned how she had heard about that. Claire interjected, announcing that she had tamed him after he tamed the spirit. This led another student to inquire about their relationship. Claire wasted no time declaring it one of a master and slave, prompting Kamito to question when he had agreed to be her slave. To restore order, the teacher asked Kamito to find a seat. The teacher asked Kamito to find a seat, but on his way to find an available one, Claire wrapped her whip around his neck, stopping him in his tracks. She demanded that he sit beside her, but Kamito refused by saying "fuck you," expressing that he didn't want to be stuck seeing her face every time he sat down. While he struggled to get loose, someone shot an ice arrow at the whip to free him. When he looked up, he saw a blonde-haired girl with green eyes, whom Claire referred to as Rinslet Lauren Frost. Rinslet is good with his flirting skills and Armic has also, so Claire got jealousy. As Claire asked why she was interfering, Rinslet stated that it was obvious Kamito wanted to sit with her. However, instead of acknowledging what he said, Kamito thanked Rinslet for saving him. In response, she asked him to become her servant, prompting Claire to tell her to find someone else, bitch. The two girls started arguing, repeatedly pulling Kamito between them like he is Luffy. Just after Freya asked them to knock it off, a maid came running towards them, asking her mistress to stop. While she was running, she accidentally tripped on the steps and almost fell. Kamito rushed to help her, because he the Spider-Man of this anime. Comment guys Spider-Man but in the process, but our Spider-Man slips and falls into her assets, and he is thinking he dead because he feel heaven. The maid, whose name was Carol, apologized but made no move to get up. The class erupted in screams while Claire brought out her whip to discipline him. That night, while lying in his shed, Kamito recalled his conversation with Greyworth. The upcoming blade dance competition would happen in 2 months, and despite his reluctance, Greyworth insisted he participate. She emphasized that he was the only one with a chance against the strongest blade dancer, Ren Ashbell, who had returned and would bring the spirit of darkness with her. Kamito also remembered his conversation with Freya, where she mentioned that their class was filled with problem children and his presence would only make things worse. She questioned his reason for accepting Greyworth's crazy idea to participate in the blade dance. Kamito told her he had done it because he was ordered to, but when she left, he privately admitted that he wanted Ronaldo to win the World Cup. Back in the present, just as he complained about being hungry, he heard a knock on the door. When he opened it, he saw Rinslet standing with a tray of food. Happily, he got up and praised her as a good person. She offered to share the food if he accepted to be her servant, but Kamito declined, shutting the door in her face. Undeterred, Rinslet knocked again, suggesting she'd overlook his rudeness if he licked her feet. Kamito slammed the door once more, but she stuck her foot in, causing her to scream in pain when he pushed the door. Finally, he opened the door, asking why she behaved like a rabid bloodhound. Ignoring the insult, Rinslet walked in, comparing the situation to a poultry, and invited him to live with her. Kamito declined, claiming he'd rather make out with a frog than stay with her. She put the food down and turned to leave, but he stopped her and offered to be friends with her if she wanted. Rinslet was surprised and became flustered, prompting him to ask if everything was alright. She brushed off his question and tried to act cool and unbothered. Just then, they heard Claire call Rinslet's name. As she dropped all the canned food in her hands, Claire called Rinslet a crazy bitch for trying to steal her slave. Rinslet wasted no time in throwing the insult back at Claire, calling her flat. And Claire have to come back, so she is saying that she was the only one who could be compared to a dog shit. Rinslet got pissed, so she summoned her elemental, a demon ice spirit named Fenrir. Claire was unfazed by this and mocked the ugly demon spirit as well. Rinslet said she wouldn't let a flat-chested girl insult her family name and get away with it. At the mention of her lack of assets, Claire got angry, summoned Scarlet, her elemental, and challenged Rinslet. Rinslet responded by saying she would take Kamito if Claire lost. Hearing this, Kamito protested and asked Carol if it was a good idea to allow the duel. Carol told him it was fine and explained that the two were always at each other, even if they were friends. The elementals attacked each other, and the girls got into a heated argument. However, as they fought, Fenrir hit Scarlet, and she landed on Kamito's shack, setting it ablaze. When Claire noticed this, she told Rinslet, who didn't believe it until she turned around. Rinslet claimed it was something she could handle and shot a freezing arrow at it. The arrow put out the fire but destroyed the shack in the process. When she said she might have used too much power, Claire told her to admit that she had no control over it. As the two started arguing, Ellis arrived with 2 other knights and scolded them for dueling on school grounds. When she saw the destroyed shack, she thought Kamito was the one who destroyed it and tried to scold him. But Claire told her that Rinslet was the one who did it. When Rinslet pointed at Claire, saying she had started the fire, Ellis said she was tired of the students from the Raven class always causing trouble. The other knights mocked them, saying they couldn't expect anything less from a backwater noble and the sister of a traitor. Claire told them to shut up, and when they tried to respond, Ellis stopped them, saying she would report the incident to the command center and turn to leave. However, before they could leave, Claire called them spineless cowards, which made Ellis threaten her. Claire refused to shut up, stating she wouldn't let anyone get away with insulting her sisters. So, she challenged the 3 of them to a duel. Rinslet volunteered to fight with her, so Ellis agreed and instructed Kamito to join them to make it a fair fight. Claire then took Kamito to her room, only to surprise him with the messy state of her living space. When he complained about it, she summoned Scarlet and asked her to clean up. Kamito asked if it was okay for him to be in the girl dorms, and she said that since he was her spirit elemental, there was no problem. She also admitted that she didn't want to leave him alone because she didn't want Rinslet to sink her fangs into him. When she turned around, she saw that he was looking through her book collection. When he started reading the names, which all had some naughty titles, she threw a pillow at his face and ran to pick up the books. While she was picking up the books, he noticed something crumpled on the floor and put it in his pocket. He then asked Claire why she had no roommates, and she said no one wanted to be around her. He inquired if she had a partner for the blade dance because she needed a team of 5 to participate. Claire told him she could handle it, stating that all she needed was a powerful spirit, and all would be well. She mentioned that since he was her slave, he would have to show her what he was capable of. He then told her that she kept dragging him into trouble and mentioned that he hadn't eaten all day. Claire took him to the kitchen and showed him all the canned food she had, asking him to pick one. Kamito asked why she was acting like a domesticated dog, but she gave some silly excuses, so he told her to admit that she was useless in the kitchen. She told him to shut up and revealed she was going to bathe but instructed him not to look in on her. Indeed, he wasn't willing to risk his life just to get a glimpse of her. But guys, I bet my life on it to get some glimpse. While she was in the shower, Kamito used Scarlet as a stove. While he was apologizing for misusing her ability, he heard Claire screaming. He was shocked because he was not there, so who else got her glimpse of her? Soon, she ran into the kitchen with a water spirit wrapped around her body, asking for help. Kamito told her not to panic and recited a chant before pulling her toward him, causing the spirit to release her. He placed his jacket around her and handed her a handkerchief to clean her face. However, when she took it, she realized it was her underwear, which he had picked up earlier, and accused him of being a disgusting pants-sniffing thief before trying to attack him. When they sat down to eat, Kamito asked why she was after a strong spirit. Claire decided to tell him the truth and explained that there was someone she wished to see again. She took off her necklace and showed it to him, and when he looked at it, he noticed it had the crest of the Duchy of Elstein. Later that night, as they walked through the forest, Kamito thought back to what Claire had revealed to him. She had told him that the Elstein dukedom had fallen 4 years ago after her sister, Rubia, caused a great disaster to befall the Areishia Empire, earning her the name Calamity Queen. This made him feel that both he and Claire were alike because they both wanted to find someone important to them. They finally got to the Astral Gate, which would take them to Astral Zero for the duel. Claire assured Kamito it was safe and only connected to low-level spirits, which was why the school left it alone. When they stepped into the center, they were transported to Astral Zero. Claire told him that any injuries sustained would be mild, but Kamito said it could be dangerous for the mind. As they walked to find Rinslet, Claire told him that she heard Ren Ashbel would participate in the upcoming Blade Dance and said she looked up to her and aspired to be like her. She also mentioned that Ren's Blade Dance had helped clean up her sister's mess. Just then, they reached the arena. Rinslet asked why they were late. Claire says, "Shut up, bitch," but in his mind, so Claire explained that she had been attacked by a water spirit, which surprised Rinslet. This made Kamito wonder if the spirit devices were malfunctioning or if someone was behind the attack. Ellis and her team soon arrived, and after talking for a while, they began the duel. When Ellis summoned her elemental, a demon wind spirit, it attacked Kamito, but he managed to jump out of the way. Claire told him to use his elemental, so he summoned it, but instead of a sword, it came out as a dagger, which surprised Claire, who had seen it before. Kamito explained that it had been a long time since he used a contracted spirit, which was why he wasn't able to draw out its full power. Ellis's elemental tried to attack him again, so he jumped out of the way, and Claire used her whip to pull it back. However, one of Ellis's teammates used her eyes sword to attack Claire. When Kamito turned to look at her, the second girl attacked him with a double-sided hammer, but he managed to jump out of the way in time. The girl tried to attack again but was shot by Rinslet, whom Kamito scolded for drawing attention to herself since she was supposed to be their support. However, Rinslet ignored him and struck a pose. When Ellis sent her elemental after her, Rinslet shot at it, but the force of its wind managed to push her down. Carol and Claire screamed her name, distracted. Claire was then attacked by one of Ellis's teammates, but she used her flaming whip to hold her and surrounded her in a ball of fire. She instructed Kamito to go after Ellis, which he did. When he threw his dagger at Ellis, she deflected it with hers, and it disappeared. Ellis then called her elemental spirit, and it transformed into a lance. Kamito, however, was entranced by how she looked and called her beautiful. Ellis thought he was referring to her lance, and he admitted he was referring to her, but she misunderstood him and tried to attack him. However, she stopped when Claire's fireball and Rinslet's freezing arrow collided and exploded in their faces, causing the two girls to start bickering and arguing about who deserved the stupidity award. Kamito was focused on the two when Ellis tried to attack again, so he intervened. However, he noticed purple clouds appear and a demon spirit descended from it. Ellis told them to leave, but Kamito said he would stay behind and help her. She reminded him that he wasn't able to control his elemental. Despite Claire and her desire to gain more power, she decided to fight the demon spirit to form a contract with it. Even though Kamito told her to stay back, she moved around well with the help of Ellis but still ended up proving she was no match for the spirit. It beat her severely, slamming her onto a pillar. Claire was in a dangerous spot, so her elemental tried to protect her but ended up getting eaten. Then, Kamito jumped in while trying his best to summon the sword in his right hand. When he managed to summon the sword, he cleaved the demon in half with a single strike and defeated it. With the danger now gone, the group tended to Claire, who was depressed because she had lost Scarlet. Kamito then tried to cheer her up, but he ended up collapsing as a result of using all his energy to summon his sword. Later on, Kamito woke up and found a naked girl under the sheets who introduced herself as ESD. While he was trying to figure out how ESD got into the room, he heard Rinslet's voice and asked her to hide. She hid under the sheets again when Rinslet came in. Rinslet said since he was feeling better, he should get up, but when he hesitated, she noticed the bulge in the sheets and asked what he was hiding. Carol told her it was a normal thing for guys to be that way once they woke. What a cute girl. She did not know about this monster. But the stubborn girl said she wanted to see and pulled the sheet off to reveal ESD. This made Rinslet call him a disgusting pedo for having a plotless little girl in his bed. When he tried to explain, she summoned Fenrir and ordered him to tear Kamito to pieces. However, before Fenrir could attack, ESD commanded him to stop, which he did, shocking them. So, ESD revealed she was the spirit of the sword he summoned. Later that day, Kamito and ESD were walking around the school grounds when ESD told him the reason he wasn't able to use her full power was that he was still attached to his former contracted spirit. While they were discussing, they were interrupted by Ellis, who always got the wrong idea whenever she saw Kamito with a girl. She accused Kamito of being a shameless pedo for going after an innocent young girl, and pointed her sword at him. But before he could explain that ESD was his sword spirit, ESD reshaped Ellis's sword, which convinced her that she wasn't as bright as she assumed. They sat down to chat, and she apologized for harboring hatred towards him solely because he was a man. But Kamito told her it was fine and accepted her apology. He then asked about Claire because he had checked her room earlier, and she wasn't there. Ellis told him that Claire seemed to have been upset about losing her contracted spirit, and was probably entering the contracting ceremony for military spirits in the Academy City, which was decided through the blade dance. After hearing that Claire was trying to fight in a blade dance without a contracted spirit, Kamito decided to go look for her to stop her. Meanwhile, Claire, who was on her way to the arena, ran into someone in a hood who offered her a mysterious dark power. As expected, the clueless girl accepted it without thinking of the consequences. Kamito ran to the arena with ESD to stop Claire from getting a one-way ticket to hell, but Claire, with her arrogance and foolishness, had already entered the blade dance without a spirit. However, her efforts were useless and wasted as she was getting a record-breaking ass whooping from her competitors, putting her at a real disadvantage. They made fun of her for battling without a contracted spirit, and mocked her for being weak and useless compared to her sister, who was known as the Calamity Queen. This hit a nerve, and Claire got in her feelings, which caused the mysterious power she was given on her left hand to activate. It summoned a frenzied Hellcat spirit, a possessed version of Claire's Scarlet, and the dark energy rising from the Hellcat made all the other spirits in the arena go wild. Just then, Kamito arrived as the audience was evacuated, and he recognized the black Hellcat as Claire's fire spirit, Scarlet. So, ESD told him it was being possessed by a frenzied spirit. Kamito entered the arena with ESD as a sword and approached Claire, who appeared to be in a daze. He tried to remind her that she wasn't alone, saying that he was with her. He told her that even if she wanted power, this wasn't the way, and that if it was power she sought, he'd be her contracted spirit. The Hellcat then attacked Kamito, who had analyzed its attack patterns with ease because of its frenzied mode, allowing him to strike it with a single slash and free Scarlet from the frenzy spirit's possession. Her passionate embrace, trying to reassure him that they would find a way to help Restia. However, Kamito, overwhelmed with guilt and responsibility, pushed her away, feeling that he needed to confront the consequences of his past actions. As Claire tried to understand and support him, Kamito vowed to save Restia from the darkness and find a way to break the curse that had befallen her. The two of them, determined to face the challenges ahead, left the arena together, ready to unravel the mysteries surrounding Restia and the ominous powers that threaten their world. Kamito eventually snapped out of it, and together they hurried to stop the crazy spirit before it could reach the town. While fighting the spirit, Claire noticed that Kamito's way of fighting was a lot like Ren's. Kamito was able to beat the wild spirit, but he passed out because he used up too much of his energy. When he woke up, he discovered that ESD was undressed under his sheets, causing an awkward situation when the girls came to check on him. Meanwhile, inside a carriage heading to the academy, a purple-haired girl spoke to herself, saying she had finally found Ren. Sometime in the past, the purple-haired girl fought against a spirit. When she tried to summon her elemental, she couldn't, resigning herself to her fate. Just before the spirit could attack her, a young Kamito jumped in front of her and killed it to save her. With the spirit defeated, Kamito asked if she was okay. She thanked him for saving her but noticed the elemental in his hand and remembered it belonged to Ren. When she asked why he had it, he quickly hid it behind him. That's when she realized it was Ren, so she demanded he tell her why he was pretending to be a girl. Kamito told her he had a good reason and begged her to keep his secret, which she agreed to do because he had saved her life. He then offered to take her out of the forest, but when he noticed she had no shoes on, he offered to carry her on his back. As he carried her to the edge of the forest, she asked Kamito why he dressed as a girl to participate in the blade dance. Kamito explained that he had a wish he wanted to come true. When they reached the edge of the forest, he put her down and mentioned that he had another match to get to. Before he left, she asked him to tell her his real name, which he did. She then inquired if she would see him again, and he responded with a yes. Back in the present, the purple-haired girl was still in the carriage, expressing her happiness at finally having found him. Meanwhile, Kamito had just woken up and felt he was healed enough from the effects of the battle a week ago. He decided he could go all out during the upcoming teen battle later in the day. When he sat up, he accidentally grabbed her 2 melons and quickly removed his hands when he realized the melons are juiceless. The ESD asked if he didn't want to play with her clothes anymore. Instead of answering, Kamito asked why she was naked in his bed. The clueless spirit told him she was wearing thigh highs, but Kamito pointed out that wearing just them didn't count as being dressed. ESD called him a scoundrel for trying to get her naked. She wasn't already that way. Kamito told her to get off the bed, but instead of doing as she was told, she kissed him. This made him ask why she did that, but she said it was his wake-up kiss. She explained that she knew kissing was the way to form a contract, and he tried to explain that it wasn't necessary. However, she stopped him, saying she was his contracted spirit, and attempted to kiss him. But, surprise surprise, Mother Fliper, Claire entered in the room. Kamito tried to explain, but she says, "Fuck off," and the two fell out of bed. Claire stood above them and demanded an explanation, but Kamito told her that her underwear was visible from his position. Guys, he is such a good comedian. This made her close her legs quickly before calling Scarlet to burn Kamito instantly. Later in the day, they headed for their team battle, and Freya explained that their performance during the battles would affect their school rankings. She also informed them that only the top 3 teams would be allowed to participate in the blade dance. When Kamito pointed out that it was unfair to have just him and Claire against a team of 5, Freya told them she wasn't to blame for having only 2 members on their team. She added that if, by the time of the blade dance, they didn't have 5 people on their team, they wouldn't be allowed to participate. Claire assured her that they would have a complete team by then and even bragged that she and Kamito were enough to handle the team in front of them. Freya then blew the whistle to start the battle. Later, while they were eating with ESD, Claire complained about how easy it was for them to be defeated. Kamito explained that the other team was stalling. He then remembered that one of them had performed a summoning dance and used her stampede spirit to cause a stampede among the nearby beasts. After that, Freya told them to gather more members if they wanted a chance to participate in the blade dance. Before leaving, she pointed out that Kamito fought like he was alone, which wasn't good for teamwork. Kamito was lost in thought, so ESD and Claire asked if it was because he was thinking about Restia. He didn't respond, so ESD told him that if he wanted to talk about it, he could talk to her. Just then, Rinslet and Carol approached them. Rinslet claimed she was just passing by, but Carol expressed the desire to join them for lunch, so Kamito invited her to join them. When they were seated, Carol told them about the new transfer student who used the Holy Attribute Spirit during her entrance exams. When Carol mentioned the student having an impressive physique, Kamito asked how she had such information. Carol simply asked if he wanted her to set him up. Claire, being shy, asked if he was a fan of milkshakes. ESD inquired if he was the type of guy interested in a well-built body regardless of the facial appearance, and later on, Rinslet asked if they had found new members for their team. Claire explained that they hadn't found anyone yet. When Rinslet was asked if she had found teammates, she claimed she hadn't seen anyone as good as she was. However, Carol revealed that everyone on her team had quit due to unrealistic expectations and her undeniably large ego. Claire agreed that Rinslet was too prideful to work with others and wondered if they would find anyone to join their team. When Rinslet mentioned asking the new student, Claire didn't catch on. Carol whispered in Kamito's ear that she was waiting for them to ask her. Kamito then told Claire to ask her, but Claire initially refused, expressing concerns that Rinslet was a loose cannon and would cause them a lot of problems due to her self-centered nature. However, Kamito managed to convince her, and Claire asked Rinslet to join their team. The self-absorbed Rinslet suggested that they should join her team instead. While they were arguing, Ellis approached them and asked Kamito to join her team. Before he could give her an answer, Claire hugged him and firmly stated that there was no way he'd leave her to join Ellis's team. Kamito realized that Claire's behavior stemmed from her fear of being abandoned due to her past. Consequently, he declined Ellis's offer. Ellis then turned to Lee but informed him that the headmaster had requested his presence. Upon reaching Greyworth's office, Ellis mentioned that she had someone she wanted him to meet. When the new girl approached him, she wondered if he knew who she was. However, when Kamito asked who she was, she realized he had no idea. Greyworth introduced her as Fiona, and she informed Kamito that she had a job for him. Fiona wanted Kamito and his team to be her bodyguards. Kamito wondered why someone of such high ranking would transfer to their school, and knelt down to show respect. However, Fiona told him it wasn't necessary since she was the Lost Queen. Greyworth then explained that after Ruya disappeared 4 years ago, the Divine Ritual Institute had tried to appoint a second spirit princess to replace her and calm the Fire Spirit King's rage. They chose Fiona, but she refused, leading to her stepping down from her position and getting disowned by the royal family. Kamito knew she had been disowned, but the reason was never made known to the public. After clarifying this, Kamito asked about the mission. Greyworth informed him that it was an S-rank mission, which would raise his team's ranking if they succeeded. Intrigued, Kamito asked for more details. Greyworth explained that Gad, the old mining town where spirit ore was once mined, had been experiencing unusual earthquakes. She needed him to investigate the cause. Kamito wondered how it was an S-rank mission if all they had to do was investigate earthquakes. Greyworth informed him that there was something in the town that could potentially cause trouble, but before she could provide more details, Freya entered. Freya explained that the potential threat was a strategic military spirit that could easily destroy a city. She added that these spirits were considered inhumane, so they had been sealed off and disposed of after the last Great War. Kamito then asked if these spirits were the cause of the earthquakes. Greyworth revealed that they needed to investigate to find out more about the situation. Fiona also added that if the seal were to weaken, she would perform spirit dance rituals to calm the spirits. Kamito informed them that he would have to speak with Claire to find out if she wanted to go on the mission before he could give them an answer. When they left the office, Freya asked Greyworth if he knew that Fiona had cheated in the entrance exam, and Greyworth told her that she already knew. She told Freya that it would be fortunate for them if Fiona awakened as an elementalist. However, before she could continue what she was saying, a one-eyed creature appeared in the office and flew to her. Greyworth held it in her hand and informed Freya that there was an uninvited guest in the Academy City. Meanwhile, as Kamito and Fiona walked through the corridor, he asked if she was okay with him being her bodyguard, and she admitted that she had requested him specifically. While they were speaking, they overheard nearby students gossiping about them. Fiona then pressed her chest against his body and asked if he would believe her if she told him she had transferred schools because of him. Confused, Kamito asked what she meant. Fiona smiled, called him by a name, and ran away, leaving him puzzled. He questioned how she knew his identity. Before she could say anything else, Claire, who had been complaining about Kamito taking his time in the headmaster's office, turned the corner and saw them. She called Kamito a shameless jerk, and he tried to explain himself. However, Claire wasn't interested in listening and was threatening him. When Fiona asked if she was Claire Rouge, Claire turned to her and asked why she had asked that. Fiona said nothing, and the two ended up staring at each other. Later that evening, in their room, Claire complained about having to share a room with Fiona, stating that it was already cramped with ESD staying there. Kamito offered to leave, but Claire didn't like the idea. She told him that if he left, there would be no one to cook or clean. She even admitted that if he left, Ellis and Rinslet would have the chance to make their move on him, and she wasn't willing to share him. This prompted Fiona to ask about the nature of their relationship. Claire told her that Kamito was her contracted spirit, and they had already completed the contract ritual, which is kissing each other. After hearing about the contracted spirit relationship between Kamito and Claire, Fiona looked mad. Kamito wondered why she would be upset over him and Claire kissing. Fiona then pointed at Claire and challenged her to a duel, suggesting that if she lost, she would leave the room and allow the two to enjoy themselves as lovebirds. Claire tried to refuse, so Fiona asked if she was scared of losing Kamito to her. Upon hearing this, Claire immediately agreed and summoned Scarlet. However, Fiona clarified that she wasn't challenging her to a blade dance and suggested settling things like back alley thugs with violence. Claire made a confused sound, prompting Fiona to question if all her brain's energy went to her plots. When Claire looked at her chest, Fiona remarked that Claire was genetically stupid since she couldn't understand simple things. This angered Claire, leading her to attempt an attack, but Kamito stopped her. Fiona then announced that they would have a cook-off. After cooking, Claire was the first to present her food, but it looked like charred remains. Despite the appearance, she confidently claimed it tasted better than it looked. When ESD took a bite, she remarked that it tasted like death. But Claire argued that Scarlet had no problem eating it, so Kamito told her that Scarlet was a fire spirit and had no taste buds. Fiona placed her meal before them, and when Kamito asked what it was, she claimed it was the royal family's special white stew. Kamito wondered if she was colorblind or plain stupid because the food before them was red. Claire claimed it didn't look safe to eat, and Fiona urged them to try it. Claire decided to give it a taste, but immediately after, she fell face first into the plate. Later that night, the knights had been defeated, and only Ellis remained standing. She fought off the intruder with all her might, but despite her efforts, she wasn't strong enough. Just as the intruder was about to deliver the final blow, Claire used her flaming whip to save Ellis. Kamito rushed to her side, but she told them to leave, saying the fight was none of their business. They argued that as long as their friend was in trouble, it was their business. The intruder mentioned Kamito's name and told him he wasn't going to fight him in his weakened state. He raised the item he had stolen, claiming that he already got what he came for. Turning to leave, Claire tried to stop him, but he jumped before her whip could reach him. She went after him, calling out to Kamito, who followed. Ellis told them to be careful since he had 2 elemental spirits. Claire tried to hit him with her whip, but she ended up cutting a tree in half. As it fell, it created a cloud of dust, blocking her view. Kamito jumped over the tree and mentioned that he could sense the guy right before he appeared at his side. The intruder referred to Kamito as Ren while trying to stab him. Kamito managed to dodge all his attacks. The intruder summoned a 3rd elemental, shocking Kamito, who claimed it was impossible. The intruder said that the demon lord Solomon had controlled 72 spirits, but Kamito argued that it was all a myth, and no one could confirm it. The intruder then introduced himself as Gio Inzaghi, the successor of the demon lord. Then, Claire threw a fireball, but Gio dispelled it using a 4th spirit, resulting in a smokescreen. Gio held Kamito at knife point, stating that killing him wouldn't prove he was the demon lord's successor. Before he could say more, Fiona threw a crystal at him, which he cut in half, causing an explosion of light. Enraged, he turned to look at her, but she told him to leave her friends alone, even though her knees were shaking. Fiona had just woken up when Kamito walked into the room. She asked how his shoulder was doing, and he told her it was okay. However, she apologized for causing them trouble because she had been too much of a coward to do anything. Kamito ignored what she had said and thanked her for helping by throwing the elemental waffy. Kamito sat on her bed and smiled at her, but she looked away and wondered why he cared about her when she had only come to use him. He informed her that even though the knights were investigating the incident, they still had to go to the mining town. He then told her he wanted to speak to her about an important matter. However, she noticed the door had opened, so she said she would speak to him where Claire wouldn't be able to hear their conversation. Immediately, Claire burst in, demanding to know what was so important they had to discuss in secret. Kamito told the curious girl to keep her the f*** out of it, and stop imagining wired things. However, Claire pulled out her weapon to attack. Kamito thinks this ugly bitch is bad, so picked Fiona up and jumped out the window. He took her to the forest and asked how she knew he was Ren. She gave him clues until he remembered who she was. Kamito asked why she had transferred schools, and she admitted she heard about a male elementalist. So, she did some investigations and found out he was the same person she had met years ago. As they moved towards the lake, she told him she decided to come to Areishia to use his secret to blackmail him into forming a team with her. Kamito asked why, and she explained that being on the same team as Ren would ensure that she won the blade dance. This, in turn, would help her regain her title and honor, silencing all her haters. Meanwhile, in the school, Rinslet told Claire that she wanted to join her mission. Claire asked why she wanted to come along, to which Rinslet responded by saying she didn't want to be away from her servant. Claire argued that Kamito was her slave, not Rinslet's servant, so she had no business coming along. However, Rinslet then told her that if she agreed, she would share the secrets to growing bigger plots with her. Hearing this made the miniature Barbie doll agree since she was desperate to get Kamito's attention. After agreeing, she shyly asked Rinslet to tell her what it was, and Rinslet gladly whispered it in her ear. Back in the forest, Fiona asked Kamito why he wasn't angry at her for trying to use him, and he told her that all the women in his life were already taking advantage of him, so what's one more going to do? Just then, Ellis and 2 other knights approached them. Since Ellis liked to jump to conclusions, she immediately thought the 2 were out in the forest to do some fun in bushes. Since Fiona liked to tease Kamito, she hugged his arms and put her head on his shoulder before telling Ellis that they had indeed come out to develop plot. Ellis drew her sword and told them she wouldn't allow such immoral behavior on school grounds. However, one of her knights pulled her to calm down and stop behaving like a jealous ex-girlfriend. When she put her sword away, Kamito asked why they were out so early. Ellis explained that they were on their way to Gad because they had tracked Gio to that location. Kamito asked her to join him since he was also going there, but she refused, saying they had to restore their honor by catching him themselves. When it was time to leave for Gad, Kamito waited outside the gates with Claire and Rinslet for the girls to arrive. Claire and Rinslet were the first to arrive, so he asked why Rinslet was coming along. Claire told him she allowed it in exchange for some important information, which confused him. Rinslet attempted to share what it was, but Claire threatened her with her whip. After Rinslet said goodbye to Carol, Fiona approached them while struggling with her horse. Kamito helped her calm the horse down, reminiscing about the time when they were roommates in the stable. Claire asked why Fiona could ride a horse when she was a princess, so Fiona responded she can ride any horse, because she liked horse riding. Claire teased Fiona by saying that were stopping her from balancing, leading Fiona to retort that the only reason Claire could ride was because she was built like a boy. Rinslet then introduced herself to Fiona. However, Claire didn't seem to like the way the two were behaving towards each other. They arrived at Gad, which looked like a complete ghost town with no one in sight. As they walked through the mines, Fiona noticed a stone altar and told the others that a ceremony had been performed there recently. She explained that it was an unbinding ceremony, but since this altar was fake, it didn't work. Just then, the cave shook, and they wondered if Geo had managed to unseal the spirit. As they ran to investigate, they found Ellis fighting Geo. Kamito charged ahead to attack him, but Geo didn't move and released a cloud of poison gas, affecting everyone but him since he was using a wind spirit to protect himself. Ellis then created a whirlwind and sent it towards him, stopping the gas from spreading further and pushing him back. Next, Geo summoned an elemental waffle and tried to attack Ellis, but Claire shot a fireball at him while Kamito attacked him head-on. Kamito managed to break the sword, but Geo kept summoning one after the other, making Kamito wonder how many spirits he was controlling. Claire pulled Geo's hand with her whip, but he threw an ice ball at her. She tried to stop it with a fireball, but it exploded and sent her flying. Kamito turned to look at her, but Geo used the opportunity to attack. However, Kamito managed to block the attack, and as they struggled against each other, Rinslet shot one of her arrows at Geo. He blocked the attack with the help of a ground spirit, which he then used to trap her. An enraged Kamito slashed at the stone surrounding Geo, but because he had used too much divine energy, his sword shrunk to a dagger. Geo mocked him, calling him weak and pathetic. Kamito argued that he had been out of the game for 3 years, so he was still learning to control his elemental. Geo told him that wasn't the reason and said he'd show him why he was weak. Before pulling a move, Geo sent a beam towards the girls. Kamito jumped in the way and managed to stop the blast before it reached the girls, but the effects of the blast sent them flying in different directions. Just as Kamito stood up and told Fiona to hide, Geo called him a pathetic brat, because he kept trying to save his friends. He then decided to end things by releasing his strongest spirit, which he claimed had been given to him by Restia. However, before he could do anything, Fiona stepped beside Kamito and demanded he stop. Kamito asked if she was crazy, but instead of answering his taunts, she started chanting and revealed a stone hidden in her bosom. Geo tried to counter the blast with his own, but it was pointless as it exploded in his face. When the dust cleared up, Geo was nowhere to be seen. When Kamito asked Fiona what the stone was, she told him it was a bloodstone, a special spirit stone that contained the powers of a high-level spirit. However, Claire was mostly interested in knowing why Fiona had been pretending to have big melons. Fiona explained that she needed some extra protection to cover her melons. She also said she heard guys liked it big, which made Kamito tell her that some guys preferred tangerines to watermelons. Claire started feeling hopeful until Kamito said he preferred gups. Fiona then fell to the ground, revealing that the bloodstone was supposed to be her trump card during the blade dance. Kamito asked why she was carrying it around, so she admitted that she had lost her contracted spirit 4 years ago after an incident. Because of that, she had lost her position as a spirit princess and was disowned by the royal family. She also told them she used the stone during her exams so people believed she was controlling the spirits. When Claire asked why she wanted to come to their school so badly that she cheated her way in, Fiona said it was because she wanted to win the blade dance and have her wish to regain her powers granted. Claire said she could have joined any other team, yet she chose theirs even though she knew they were at the bottom of the table. However, Fiona explained that since Kamito was a male elementalist and Claire was the sister of the Calamity Queen, it would not be strange to have the Lost Queen on their team, as they were all unwanted rejects. She then asked if they would still let her be on the team now that they knew she was powerless. Kamito told her that friends didn't abandon friends. Just then, the cave shook, and Kamito asked if Geo might have unsealed the spirit. Fiona claimed he couldn't have done so since he didn't know the location of the real altar. Claire reminded them that he still had the sealed documents he had stolen and could use them to find the altar's location. Ellis assured her that it was written in code, so there was no way he'd be able to decipher it. Kamito asked Ellis if she was fine, but she said the poison had paralyzed her legs. Even Rinslet was in no position to fight, which left only Kamito, Claire, and Fiona. Kamito asked Fiona if she would be able to do a spirit dance without her contracted spirit, and she assured him that she could. So, ESD revealed that she knew the location of the shrine and offered to lead them there. Meanwhile, Gio had gone to meet Restia, who told him that he would soon find the real shrine. However, he demanded she take him there, stating that he needed to make Kamito pay for insulting the demon lord. Restia advised him to give up because he couldn't beat Kamito, as Kamito was the real demon lord. Back in the mines, Kamito and the girls finally found the shrine. Claire noticed the door had elemental carvings, and ESD explained that the one that was scratched was Ren Ashbel, whose existence had been erased. Before Kamito could ask what she meant, the door opened. When they walked in, Kamito asked if that was where Fiona needed to dance, and she told him yes but said she had to purify herself first. Claire also claimed she had lost a lot of divine power and went to take a bath in the water. When Kamito asked what he was supposed to do, they told him to stand outside and keep watch as the girls purified themselves. Claire asked Fiona if someone could grow big melons if they allowed their crush to touch them. Fiona laughed and told her she was a mental lightweight for believing such a bogus lie. She then explained that when they reached puberty, they would grow on their own. However, Claire wasn't convinced and started groping Fiona to confirm it. Meanwhile, ESD asked Kamito if he was getting excited by the sound of the girls bathing, but Kamito told her he was trying to figure out Gio's game. Just then, he sensed Gio's presence and switched to sword form, allowing him to immediately clash with Gio. As they fought, Kamito realized that Gio moved in the same way he was taught at the training institute. Gio claimed to be the first successful experiment to bring the demon lord back, but Kamito called him a failed experiment. Kamito explained that the spirits Gio controlled weren't contracted to him. Instead, they were sealed inside his body and were all single use. Gio insisted he was the demon lord and told Kamito he would prove it by beating him. As he tried to attack, Kamito managed to dodge, but when he noticed his sword changing colors, he got distracted. Gio used the chance to stab Kamito's side. Gio then revealed a bloodstone and admitted it was the source of his power. Just then, Claire used her whip to pull Gio's arm back, while Fiona started her spirit dance. As she danced, Gio's body began to warp. Kamito explained that since he had spirits sealed in his body, they reacted to Fiona's dance. When she concluded the dance, Gio fell to the floor, and Restia floated down. Kamito asked why she was there, and Restia told him her mission was to release the spirit sealed in the cave. Gio stood up and demanded that Restia give him more spirits. She decided to become his blade to see if it would push Kamito to awaken. The crazed-looking Gio released a blast of black energy towards Fiona, but Kamito stood in the way and got hit. While Kamito was struggling against the effects of the blast, Fiona became worried. In a desperate attempt to save Kamito, she managed to summon her night spirit, and together with Claire, they took Gio down. Sometime later, Kamito woke up in his bed, wondering what Restia was up to. To his surprise, he felt someone move under his blanket, and upon raising it, he found Fiona. "Don't worry guys, she was not doing anything." She explained that she was trying to transfer some of her spirit power to him. Kamito told her it wasn't necessary and asked if she would return to the institute, but she revealed she had one more wish to fulfill before kissing his cheek. Claire soon entered the room and tried to confront them. In a flashback, a younger Ellis watched a blade dance match between her sister and Ren, who was the same age as her at the time. Ren easily defeated Ellis's sister, sparking Ellis's interest in him. Back in the present, Kamito woke up and checked for any unexpected occupants under his sheets. Relieved to find it empty, he heard voices coming from the kitchen, where Claire and Fiona were making chocolates for the upcoming Vailna festival. However, it seemed like Fiona was adding aphrodisiac ingredients to hers, planning to give them to Kamito, and make unleash all the spirits in his bedroom. Kamito then entered the room and questioned who the chocolates were for, considering their school was an all-girls school. Claire explained that they were for her friends, leaving Kamito puzzled as he was under the impression that Claire didn't have many friends. To his surprise, Claire tried to offer him coal, insisting it was cookies. Meanwhile, Freya encountered an incomplete team and inquired about their true identity. Greyworth informed her that Valseria would be returning soon. Then, she asked Freya for her report. Freya mentioned that some bad people had come into the school and were trying to sell special marks to the students because there was a blade dance event coming up. Greyworth decided to increase security. Meanwhile, Kamito took part in a practice session to improve his ranking. Kamito, Claire, and Fiona did well and won their matches. After the match, Fiona suggested they have lunch to celebrate their team's victory. However, their earlier opponents came to make fun of them, but Rinslet chased them away. Rinslet then invited everyone to lunch, and although they hesitated at first, they accepted when they realized she just wanted to share a meal with everyone. Before leaving, Kamito want to attend some extra classes, if you what is it means. In the class, Kamito approached Ellis, who was trying to read. Startled, she quickly pulled out her sword and pointed it at him. Kamito explained that he was there for the extra lesson, which made her apologize for being hasty. She told him she was also there for the lesson. Kamito then noticed that Ellis was trying to memorize the entire book, so he decided to give her some important pointers. Ellis found Kamito's tutoring easy to understand and asked if he could continue tutoring her after the class. Kamito agreed and told her to meet him at the garden at 5, as he had other plans after the lesson. During the lecture, Ellis informed Kamito that people were selling cursed illegal seals around the Academy City. After the class, Kamito and the others were walking to the restaurant when they saw Ellis standing in front of a jewelry store. Kamito approached her and asked what she was looking at, but she told him it was nothing before walking away. Rinslet then approached him and informed him that the next day would be Claire's birthday, mentioning she only remembered because it was the same day as the Velna festival. When they finally arrived at the restaurant, EST asked Kamito if she could order whatever she wanted, as he had promised her she could. On the other hand, the waitress who had taken their orders seemed to be interested in Claire. Later on, Ellis met up with Kamito, and he suggested going to the library if she wanted to study. However, she preferred studying in her room. She took Kamito to her house, went to change her outfit, and left him alone in the living room. While looking at pictures, she returned dressed as a maid. When he asked why she was dressed that way, she explained that she wanted to repay him for helping the knights. Her friends had told her that guys like it when girls dress as maids. However, Kamito told her he wasn't into that kind of thing, which led Ellis to call him a disgusting loser, thinking he wanted her to wear something more revealing. She pulled out her sword, held it to his neck, and threatened him before asking what he wanted her to do. Trying to avoid getting his head chopped off, Kamito asked her to do what she knew best, so she decided to cook for him. However, she made it her duty to feed him, stating that it was the way maids served their masters. Later that night, as they sat on a bench outside, she expressed her gladness at being able to pay him back. She mentioned that inviting him over when her roommate was around would have been a big problem. Kamito then asked if her roommate was a scared person, so Ellis told him she was her elder sister, Valseria, who was once the captain of the knights. She clarified that they weren't related by blood, and Valseria was trained to be a numbers candidate. However, after losing against Ren 3 years ago, she changed. Ellis then offered Kamito a temporary position on the knight squad until the members were healed, and he agreed. However, he asked if he could be paid in advance. Meanwhile, Claire was busy making chocolate when Kamito came back to the room. She demanded to know where he had been, so he told her that Ellis had invited him over for dinner as a way of saying thank you. Claire scolded him for going to Ellis without informing her and said she would make him work for her. This prompted Kamito to admit that he had accepted Ellis's invitation to join the Knights. He apologized for deciding without speaking to her first, but Claire burst into tears, expressing her frustration that he was siding with Ellis, especially knowing that she and the Knights weren't on good terms. Angrily, she kicked him out. The next morning, Ellis addressed the Knights and informed them that they would be patrolling the town to ensure students behaved well during the Velna festival. Kamito was watching from behind and noticed that most of the Knights were either mocking Ellis or discussing other matters. This made him understand why she found it challenging to lead them. Ellis began to inform the Knights that Kamito would be joining them, but before she could say more, the door opened, and Valseria walked in. Valseria told Ellis that her weakness had caused some of the Knights to get injured, referring to them as pawns. Ellis argued with her, and Valseria walked towards her. However, Kamito got in the way. Valseria then expressed her intention to test Kamito's power, and used a wind strike, creating a hole in the center of the rune and sending the students flying. She then took the 4 students who didn't fall over and announced they would be in her team before walking out. Meanwhile, Kamito and Ellis gathered the remaining Knights, and together they went ahead to patrol the town and keep people out of trouble. While they were having lunch, Kamito noticed Scarlet and followed her until she met up with Ellis. When Ellis saw him, she tried to pretend everything was fine and invited him to go have cake with her. However, he told her he was helping Alice out. Ellis got angry and complained that he was spending time with the same people who had been mean to her, but he tried to reason with her. Ellis didn't give him the chance, and when Alice approached them, she threw the bag she was holding and ran off. While she was running, 2 students were watching her as they discussed what to do to her. Before they went after her, they were approached by the elf with green hair who had served Kamito and his friends at the restaurant. She offered to give them the power to fight Alice. Meanwhile, Claire, who had run off into the forest, was busy expressing her frustration about Kamito choosing Ellis over her. As she vented her feelings, she was approached by the same elf who had earlier offered power to the students back in the town. Kamito wondered where Claire had gone while he walked around with Ellis, who was acting strangely, almost like they were on a date. As they strolled, Ellis tried to walk ahead and nearly got hit, prompting Kamito to pull her hand. She suddenly became shy and started manifesting her innate sundial syndrome. The oblivious Kamito asked why her hands were warm, and she told him it was his fault for holding her hand. Ellis admitted it was the first time a guy had held her hand, so he continued holding it as they walked. Passing by a dress shop, Ellis stopped to admire a dress in the window. Kamito told her it would look nice on her, but she disagreed. Watching her, he asked why she became a knight. She explained that she wanted to become like her sister, who was once noble and stood for what was right. However, her sister changed and became power-hungry after losing to Ren during the blade dance 4 years ago. Ellis revealed her desire to participate in the blade dance to prove to her sister that being a knight meant doing what was right. Kamito inquired why she didn't hate Ren since she was the reason her sister changed. Ellis admitted that she initially hated Ren when she defeated her sister, but as she watched Ren fight, she became drawn to the way she moved. She explained that Ren moved as if she was wielding her sword for someone else, which made her appear noble. Back in the forest, the elf had trapped Claire in a web and attempted to hypnotize her into accepting power from her. Just as Claire was about to fall for the trick, she remembered Kamito and summoned Scarlet, who burned the web and freed her. Claire tried to attack the elf, but she disappeared. The two girls whom the elf had met earlier approached Claire, and from their behavior, she realized they had already accepted a cursed seal from the elf. One of the girls screamed, causing her body to be engulfed in a cloud of black smoke that flew up and released a demon spirit. The demon spirit jumped down and tried to attack Claire. Meanwhile, in the town, Kamito and Ellis had just come out of a store where they bought a gift for Claire. While discussing, they heard an explosion and saw smoke rising nearby. They ran to investigate and found a spirit rampaging through the streets. Kamito pulled out his sword, and they charged at it. Ellis attacked the spirit, but it deflected her attack, sending Kamito flying. When Kamito raised his head, he noticed a child crying behind the spirit. He ran toward her, but the spirit tried to attack her. Fortunately, he got to the child before it hit her, but he got stabbed in the process. Ellis ran to him, took the child, and Kamito asked her to back him up while he attacked the spirit. Ellis pointed out that he was injured, but Kamito told her there was no other way because her elemental waff was useless against the spirit. He charged at the spirit while Ellis used her wind spirit to boost him, allowing him to crack the spirit's mirror. However, he was pushed back by the force. The spirit attempted to attack him, but he was saved by Claire, who used her flaming whip to push it back. Kamito asked why she was there, but Claire said they would talk after they took care of the spirits. That's when he noticed the one that had been chasing her. Claire quickly explained that the masters of the spirits had fallen for the temptation of a cursed seal, losing control of the spirits. Ellis stood up and asked Claire to help take the spirits down. As they charged at it, there was an explosion, taking out half the spirits and destroying the area. Kamito wondered what had happened, and they noticed Vulsaria's silent fortress floating in the air. When she came down, Kamito scolded her for being reckless and firing her elemental waff at innocent civilians. Vulsaria told him she had only done what was right, and it wasn't her fault if anyone had gotten caught in the crossfire. This surprised them, and Ellis asked if she didn't care about the innocent people. Vulsaria accused her of being too weak to be a knight because she couldn't take the necessary actions needed to do her duty. When she tried to walk away, Kamito called her back and demanded she apologize to Ellis. However, she refused, so Kamito tried to attack her, but she knocked him out. Kamito woke up, bandaged, as Claire walked into the room. When he tried to move, he felt pain, prompting Claire to rush to him and check if he was okay. She told him to stop moving about. Kamito then asked how long he had been asleep, and she informed him that he'd been out for an entire day. Quickly reaching into his blazer pocket, Kamito pulled out the gift he had bought for her and explained that he got it from the money Ellis paid him for helping with the knights. Claire opened the gift and saw it was the necklace she wanted. She apologized for being unbearable because of her jealousy towards Ellis. While she was trying to kiss him, Fiona knocked on the door and teased Kamito, saying he was barely out of his sickbed but already trying to ravish an innocent maiden. She then informed them that the first match for the Blade Dance trials had been announced, and their team was up against Vulsaria's team. Kamito stated that he was going to ensure Claire paid for what she had said to Ellis the day before. However, Fiona intervened, pushing her affectionate gestures towards Kamito and making Claire jealous. She claimed he was in no condition to fight. Tired of the spectacle, Claire pulled Fiona back and told Kamito that she agreed with Fiona. When he attempted to argue, Rinslet walked in. Rinslet revealed she had overheard their predicament and claimed she would be the perfect person to take down Valseria's fortress. Carol informed them that she wanted to ask if she could join their team. Although the proud girl initially denied it, Kamito asked if she would join them, and she agreed. He then asked Claire if she was okay with it, and she said it was fine, as long as they could take down Valseria. Meanwhile, Ellis sat in her room berating herself when Claire walked in and told her that the only way to prove herself to her sister was to beat her in the blade dance. She informed Ellis that their team was going up against Valseria, which Ellis described as suicide. However, Claire told her that she didn't care who they faced as long as they won and had her wish granted. Claire then asked Ellis to join their team since Kamito was still injured. Ellis refused, stating she couldn't leave her team alone. Just then, her teammates entered and suggested that she had a better chance of winning if she worked with Claire. Despite Ellis's initial resistance, they argued that their injuries wouldn't be healed by the time of the blade dance and asked her to join for their sake. Reluctantly, Ellis agreed and told Claire she would join her team. Later that night, as Valseria stood outside, she was approached by the green-haired elf. Valseria told the elf to stay away, but she mentioned she had come to see how the seal in her heart was doing. Valseria expressed that she didn't mind the seal and said as long as she was still alive by the time the blade dance took place, she didn't care. Somewhere else on the school grounds, Ellis met up with Kamito and asked how he was doing before handing him a gift. Kamito questioned the reason for the gift, and she explained it was to show appreciation for helping the knights. As she turned to leave, mentioning she had to wake up early for the trials, Kamito stopped her and assured her that their team would win. Ellis told him that if they won, she would be able to prove to her sister that she had been wrong. As the two talked, they didn't notice Areishia watching them from a tree. The next day, the students gathered at the Astral Gate to watch the match between Valseria's team and Claire's team. Valseria criticized Ellis for teaming up with Claire, but Ellis confidently stated that she would defeat her and prove her wrong. When the bells rang, signaling the start of the match, they were transported to Astral Zero. Once there, the girls quickly devised a plan to take down Valseria's team. However, Valseria challenged them, insisting they face her alone. Positioned in her silent fortress, she immediately began shooting at them. Rinslet managed to shoot down all her blasts, leaving them unharmed. Rinslet then shot more arrows, covering Valseria in ice, rendering her unable to move. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Claire counterattacked with a fireball, and Ellis supported her with a wind strike. Just when they thought it was over, they noticed the fortress was unharmed, and Valseria charged at them. However, Fiona summoned her night spirit, stopping Valseria in her tracks. Despite Valseria's attempts to shoot at her, Claire used her whip to break the cannon and fired another fireball. Ellis used her wind strike to lift the fortress in a whirlwind, but it remained unharmed, allowing Valseria to resume her rapid shots. All the girls fought back, but their attacks seemed futile against the fortress. Kamito, watching from the Astral Gate, pointed out that Valseria had reached her limit, as her elemental waff had used up a significant amount of divine energy back in Astral Zero. Fiona was reaching her limit, and Ellis was starting to lose hope. However, Claire reminded Ellis of the promise she made to her friends. When Valseria started shooting again, Claire summoned Scarlet, drawing the missiles towards herself to allow Claire to attack the fortress. Using her spirit magic, Claire heated the fortress's leg before Rinslet shot it with her freezing arrow. Claire then jumped back and released a fire blaze, finally breaking the fortress due to the thermal stress. Valseria fell but managed to stand up before she was enveloped by a dark spirit and lost control. It turned out she had fallen under the influence of the cursed seal that had been placed on her heart. Meanwhile, in Greyworth's office, Freya tried to convince her to stop the match since things were getting out of hand. However, Greyworth refused, stating she wanted to see how it played out. Back in Astral Zero, a possessed Valseria managed to overpower all the girls except Ellis and began absorbing their divine power. Kamito realized they were in trouble and decided to intervene to help them. However, Areishia reminded him that he would only be able to use her as an elemental waff. Meanwhile, Ellis was trying to fight off Fiona, so Claire told her to save herself. However, Ellis refused and attacked her sister again. When she reached Fiona, she couldn't use her power and realized Fiona had started absorbing her divine powers too. Ellis resigned to her fate, and just as Valseria was about to strike her, Kamito cut off her arm. He then released all the girls and told them he'd handle the rest. However, Claire scolded him for coming to fight in his condition. Kamito reassured them not to worry and stated he had something to settle with Valseria. He attacked her with full strength, and as the girls watched, Ellis noticed that he moved the same way Ren did 3 years ago. However, Kamito was already reaching his limit. Just then, Freya cut off the fortress, transforming it into a lance. Claire screamed at him to move, but Fiona told her to let him be. Fiona channeled her healing magic and shot it at Kamito, instantly healing his wounds before she fainted. The girls then decided to lend him a hand, and together they attacked Valseria from every angle, not giving her a chance to defend herself. With the help of Ellis's wind power, Kamito charged at Valseria and stabbed her. He told her he was going to save her, and as she looked at him, she realized he and Ren were the same person. Valseria accepted her defeat, but Kamito told her it was a team effort that brought her down. Elsewhere in the forest, Areishia wasn't discouraged and decided she would play with Kamito next if she got the chance. Just then, Vivian Musa, her former student, appeared. Greyworth was surprised to see her. Greyworth realized that the curse seals on the two students, whose elemental spirits had rampaged days before, matched the ones she had used before. Vivian asked if Greyworth was going to hurt her because of some stupid students. Greyworth replied that she would do anything to protect her students before releasing a spirit that attacked Vivian. When the spirit was done, all that remained was Vivian's bloody clothes. Before Greyworth left, she noticed Areishia watching her. Areishia told her she wouldn't allow Kamito to do whatever she wanted with him before disappearing. After the match, Kamito and the girls went to Ellis's room to celebrate the fact that they had been picked to represent their school in the Blade Dance. While they were teasing each other, Ellis joined them, dressed in a pink gown. As Kamito watched Ellis, he remembered that Valseria had asked him to watch over her sister while she was away receiving treatment. It turned out that Ellis had lost most of her divine power because of the curse seal and needed time to recover. Back in the present, the girls tried to feed Kamito some cake, each attempting to do it at the same time. Days later, while the team stood at the Astral Gate and were transported to Astral Zero, Claire thought about how far she had come since she met Kamito, and was glad to have met him. That's it for this video. Watch the following video, and I'll catch you in the next one.